Welcome to you both. It's great to have a chance to talk to you. It's been a bit of time since I was in Zoom calls with you all as we were kind of going through the work. But I'm wondering if first you could just tell me your name and your role at the company, Advisors for Change. Maybe, Amy, can we start with you?
Sure. My name is Amy McPherson, and I am the CEO of Advisors for Change.
I am Krystal Thompson. I am the Senior Software Solutions Advisor here at Advisors for Change.
Amy, I'm wondering if you could tell us more about Advisors for Change and how the organization got started.
Sure. Advisors for Change is currently a fully virtual organization that works exclusively with nonprofit organizations, helping them with their financial management. We do all kinds of support for mostly community-based nonprofits, helping them really build their own capacity for financial management. So we really see ourselves as escalators for their growth. And I started AFC in 2006, and by myself, just knowing that there were not enough accountants in the world, and there are definitely not enough accountants who are focused on helping those small nonprofit organizations. So my goal was to help as many nonprofits as I could help to grow their accounting function. And I did that alone for the first 10 years of AFC before we grew and started adding more team members. And it's been great to grow to now we're 19 folks, and we're helping hundreds of organizations a year.
Oh, that's awesome. Krystal, I'm wondering I'm going to put you on the spot here with a question, but I'm wondering if you could tell me what about the work at Advisors for Change really kind of keeps you there, animates you?
Yeah, that's a great question, David. Thanks. I think the main thing that kind of gets me out of bed and into the virtual office really is knowing that the work that we do is going to help that these organizations that start with such great value-driven missions be able to have less focus on the detailed work that you don't get into these kind of businesses wanting to do, but know that it's a part of it. But we get to, alleviate some of that, so they get to put a lot more focus into doing and completing their missions while knowing that they're financially sustained.
Yeah, that's super helpful. As somebody who started a couple nonprofits, I totally hear you on that and know the value of the work you all do. Amy, I'm wondering if you could tell me a little bit about how you first heard about employee ownership and what drew you to this movement of employee ownership. And maybe you can kind of talk a little bit about what the journey was like for you in that regard.
Yeah, thanks, David. I didn't know anything about worker-owned co-ops. I'd heard the term ESOP. I vaguely knew what it was. And I'm in accounting, so I think a lot of people, might be surprised that I really didn't know. But I had always worked in nonprofits. I had never worked for a for-profit till I started my own business. So I was used to a business model that's run by a board, that has a governance structure, that shares leadership and management responsibilities, that thinks about internal controls and division of labor. And I was never super comfortable with the notion of owning a business as the sole owner. So we've always at AFC worked in a collaborative fashion, or more collaborative than a lot of small businesses, just because that's the water I always swam in. But in 2021, I got serious about what's my exit strategy, what's my future look like. We were up to 15 or 16 people, and I was like, there's 15 or 16 families that depend on AFC to be here, and what am I doing to make sure that everyone's going to be okay, no matter what my choices are for my life. And so we made a goal in 2021, me and the leadership team, to figure out some way to share ownership of the company. And we literally, was the goal, was set, figure out a way to share ownership, because we didn't know. We were lucky to have a member of our team who had worked at a co-op before, and she had a friend who worked at an organization that supported worker-owned co-ops. So I met with him, got some recommendations, and got connected to Project Equity, and never looked back. And we did go through the assessment process to determine which would be the right form of employee ownership for us. And really, with your help and your colleagues' help, we came to the worker-owned cooperative was the most obvious for us because of its parallels with the governance structure and how nonprofits work, that it was really a natural fit for us.
Oh, that's awesome. Yeah, so you alluded to some of the work that we did together. Here at Project Equity, we have kind of three key programs. The first two that you experienced at first were our feasibility work, where what we do is we work with a business and a business owner usually to identify if it's a viable business for employee ownership. We're trying to understand kind of the debt capacity analysis, what type of loan payments the business could take on, and if it's a good fit for employee ownership and what form of employee ownership. Then what we do is we move into the transition work, and that's when I had the chance to work with you all. And that's where we move a business from ownership by maybe one or a couple folks into broad-based employee ownership. Can you tell me what that process was like, going through the process of converting your business that you own to being owned by the employee base?
Well, initially it was scary, right? Because I was the unknown and I didn't know. And I was really grateful for the support of Project Equity. We had, before we hooked up with for the feasibility study, we had realized like we did some homework and work to build our profitability, work to kind of build a stronger balance sheet and reserves to kind of make sure the company would be ready for it. So we were thrilled when we did the feasibility study and it was determined we could move forward, because we were afraid we might have to wait another year or two, but we were really grateful for that help and support. And from that point forward, like we knew that we would have Project Equity support, and that made it all feel possible. So we set an ambitious goal to convert the year after the feasibility study, and again with your help and really the work of the set of employees who formed our transition team, we really accomplished an enormous amount. So any fears I had going into the process were really diminished by the fact that you all gave us a roadmap to get there, and B, we formed a committee of incredibly capable, talented, engaged, smart people who work at AFC, who really came together to do an enormous amount of work to make it possible. So credit to Krystal and the other members of that team that I did a lot of work last year, but it was everybody working in parallel, but not together, with Project Equity holding us together, that really made it possible.
Yeah, it was such a teamwork approach from you all and then us partnering with you. Krystal, I'm wondering, before we kind of get into like what it was like, the conversion process to employee ownership, I'm wondering if I can take you back to a moment in time when Amy, your boss at the time, presented the idea of becoming employee-owned business. What was that like for you? What came to mind? Just if you could kind of paint a picture for us what that experience was like.
Yeah, absolutely. As Amy mentioned, that idea kind of was presented to the team end of 2021, beginning of 2022. I started with the company at the end of 2021. So for me, it was just a whirlwind of excitement along with confusion and uncertainty, because we were stepping into a space where kind of none of us really knew what was to be expected, but we knew what the outcome we wanted, the desired outcome was, and what it could be. I would say had been with the company not too long, but it was pretty easy to feel faith and trusting what was happening. Everybody on our team really believed that whatever decisions Amy and our executive team came to were full of, conscious thought and taking everybody into consideration. There was no hesitation in accepting this was going to be the right way for us. But then it also kind of put a little pressure on us to, myself, and feeling like, okay, well, what does that kind of look like for me if now I'm being presented an opportunity that could potentially be, something life-changing for both myself and my family. So given that opportunity and responsibility, we didn't take lightly. And that's why I kind of decided to join the transition team to help guide that.
Yeah. It's interesting you talked about the potential impact for you and your family. That's fun to hear. Because that's why I do this work, is the belief that this can really broadening the ownership structures can really impact folks. And it's fun to hear that that was part of your kind of hope at the beginning. I'm wondering if you could both speak to what it was like working with an outside partner like Project Equity on this process or on this journey towards employee ownership.
Well, for one, I would say Project Equity really made it, I hate to say the word easy, but it truly did feel like an easy process because of the amount of guidance and wisdom you so freely offered at every meeting. We were never felt like we had to worry or think about anything because we knew we could always just ask. And we were able to trust the information that was given to us. It was relayed with such grace and we feel that you really helped kind of meet us in one of our pillars, which is meeting people where they are. And we really felt that you guys were, that Project Equity really was great in kind of meeting us where we wanted to be and knowing that we had a very ambitious timeline, that it took some time to, develop that mutual trust that we were, committed to each other. And we really think that, a part of all of our aside of any skepticism, or you made it a really safe space to be able to freely ask questions, come with any, a very mutual space to have any of those conversations that may have been a little bit more difficult to come to a consensus on. I think you had an invaluable add of just wisdom and experience that allowed us to be able to consider multiple different sides of things in a space that we've never been before.
Yeah, I completely echo what Krystal said. I'm a little jealous that I wasn't part of the transition team because I think they got an amazing experience. But from my perspective, where our work was probably a little more pedestrian and we didn't get to be as ambitious because it was more about like what's going to stop happening here as opposed to what's the future look like. There's no way to have done it without your support because it really took kind of that honest broker in the middle to help answer the questions. And I think the thing we benefited from all the resources, all the reading, all the clear materials. I think I'm with Krystal. It wasn't easy, but it was super clear. You had a nice process laid out. You said, here's the 6 stages. I'm like, great, we'll do 6 stages, 1 a month. And you're like, oh, I don't know. But, we were like, we're going to do it. So, but it was clear. And if it wasn't clear, there's no way we would have been able to do it as quickly. And I feel like that really playing that role as the person who'd seen it before, the person who could say, oh, here's how another group has done it, here's 3 different ways that other people have done it, really gave us the confidence that we could that we could chart our own path and yet be true to the principles and really understand like how to be an effective cooperative. And I'll say ironically, like we do that a lot for our partners. I'm on a lot of calls with nonprofits and I'm like, oh, well, I've seen it done 3 ways, 3 different ways. Here's what works and doesn't work about each. And I understand the value of that advice. And there aren't so many people in this cooperative space who have as deep knowledge and experience as you specifically and Project Equity in general. So we really, really benefited from your expertise.
Well, it was a joy for us too. One of the things, I guess, kind of using your framing there, Amy, we have worked with a lot of businesses. I've done this process with a lot of folks, and there's oftentimes a surprise, and part of our role at Project Equity is to try to make a clear path, try to deal with or plan for all the potential surprises, but there's still going to be surprises. So I'm just wondering if you could both speak to any surprises that came up along the journey, both good or bad. Were there any kind of moments where you're like, or wow, didn't expect that? Krystal, maybe I can, looks like you might have an idea there.
Yeah. I will say that one good surprise that came up was just the innate sense of people ready to step up into kind of that ownership space and have their voice considered and really lean into the fact that we were creating a space that was supposed to be reliant on everyone stepping up. And we were a little, as the transition team, you get a little unsure of whether or not as any kind of elected official, if you can say, you kind of, at one point, you have to kind of question, am I really being the voice of the people? And I feel that one of the best things where everyone's really and having their voice heard so that we could confidently make those decisions, knowing that our team spoke up and made their choices and their preferences clear. One challenging surprise, I'd say, is understanding and learning the complexity of this, like the governance structure. You guys, Project Equity really offered a lot of materials and thought into teaching the governance structure. So I will say that it was one thing that we probably took the most time in and offered the most kind of self-dedication time to be able to step up and make sure that we were all coming on from a space of making decisions on the same level of understanding. And I think while it was having things like the workbook, having set proposals into how to make decisions. Again, as Amy mentioned, having other employee-owned cooperatives and being able to have one-on-one conversations with them, as well as all of the different examples laid out for us, again, instilled that confidence to make those decisions, regardless of that challenge and how complex it was.
I'm happy to say no negative surprises. But to me, the biggest surprise was how effective the transition team was. And again, I got a little jealous, like they have these great meetings and these great conversations, and they developed a whole consensus development process that we are now using organization-wide in our new formation. And really, that was the biggest surprise to me. Was not that I should have been surprised, but I didn't know how that was going to play out. I didn't know if it would get contentious. I expected there might be some, tough moments of disagreement between the transition team as the buyer and me as the seller. And that's an odd dynamic that we were, ready to chart, but, also could be very fraught. And we didn't end up having that. And again, I think it's because we did so much homework with you, each side getting real clarity before we came together for those negotiation conversations. And so, so pleasant surprises only for me.
That's great. So one of the things that was, I think, speaks to the intentionality that I experienced with you all is you're very intentional in how you made the public announcement about becoming employee owned. And one of the things that you all did is you had an event and you recorded it, and then you put this video together. And it was one of the things in my work that brought me some of the most joy that I've had. And I'm wondering if you could explain that experience of what you all did as a group to kind of symbolize, to kind of highlight this new moment you were moving into.
I have goosebumps just taking myself back to that moment. Yep. And credit to Krystal and the team, and really Krystal individually, for taking the lead on helping to craft that moment, because we once a year get together. We're fully virtual, but once a year we have an in-person retreat that we take seriously also, to spend time together, to bond, to have a chance to get to know each other as more than just boxes on the screen. And we really, really wanted to be through the co-op process before we got to our in-person event, because it only happens once a year. So we did want to have a moment to mark the successful completion of the transition team's work during that event last year. So we saved it for I'll say at the very first thing we did at the very first meeting of that event was we gave everybody backpacks with the new cooperative logo on it, to really say, like, we're doing this, folks. Like, this is not, we are no longer sitting here talking about what are we, maybe. We're turning this corner and we're going to do it. And there were some legal things to complete and all of that, but we didn't meet our goal of having an actual legal document to sign at that event, but we invented a document to sign at that event. We held that for our final dinner. And I will say, we had dinner 3 nights. We were in a rented house, and every night the energy at the dining table where we all ate together was like would ramp up another 20 or 30% every night. So by the time it was last night, the excitement was just palpable. So we were already in a setting where people were just really talking to each other in ways that maybe they didn't before. And there were just like was a buzz in the room that is a lot for 19 people to have generated. And then that culminated in Krystal reading basically a commitment declaration and giving people an opportunity to sign their commitment to see us through to the conversion to a cooperative. And it really was an incredibly special moment. And we have an amazing partner that works with us that does come to our events to take pictures, because again, it's so rare that we're together. So it was great we captured that. And during that event, she also interviewed people one-on-one to get their like real-time impressions of what it felt like to celebrate that moment.
Amy, I can only imagine that, seeing the legacy of what you had built being transitioned into something that's going to continue to go on must have been amazing. Krystal, I'm wondering for you on the other side of that, can you tell me what that experience was like there at the table when you were crafting this commitment statement and when you were signing? What was that experience like?
Was a moment of confirmation, almost like a moment of affirmation that the work that we were doing and the time that we were putting in really, that visual of everyone here is going to be affected by what's about to happen. And throughout the whole transition, our committee really, we had our own little, what would Amy do? Kind of was our, as she mentioned, building our consensus. That was the main pillar of our consensus build. Anything disagreements that we have was really down to what would Amy do, because we knew the biggest part of our job was going to be maintaining the culture that was already here. We didn't have the extra pressure of trying to recreate something or fix something that's broken. Everything that we have, we knew was just, how can we put into legal words, into the legal terms, what this culture really is and how it can be sustained. And each of us really owned that space of, it's not about what we would want individually. It's about what is best for the collective, because that's what Amy would do. And that's exactly how our team is built on. I think we're very tuned into the space that AFC was created, the foundation that AFC was created on. And that's because of the transparency, the space that we get to openly speak to one another about discrepancies, to have our voices heard. They really don't turn into discrepancies when you give people an opportunity to say those things up front. And those are the 10 things that we wanted to be sure were captured. And so in that moment, it was a culmination of the marathon that Amy started in 19 years ago. It was a moment in, it was a mile marker, honestly, of a space where you're handing off the baton, but she's still running with us, which helped a lot in that as well. So knowing that we were stepping into a space that those signatures weren't, the one thing I want to note is that we didn't tell people that this was going to happen. So we didn't have membership agreements yet. As Amy mentioned, we weren't legally solidified, but it was a moment of faith. And the anticipation would Amy would be the first signer, and we would invite people to sign without pressure. And every person got up and signed. And then consecutively after membership actually opened and we were solidified, every person signed up for membership. So I just got goosebumps in that moment. But everyone trusted the process, and now we're co-owners, and it's amazing.
Oh, that's awesome. So that was kind of a symbol of that moment of converting the business to employee ownership. I work with a lot of business owners. I talk with people all the time about this, and I got to be honest, most people have assumptions about what a worker co-op is, and that part of a worker co-op is that everybody gets together to make every decision. And that's not how it is. That's not how you all function. You guys are folks that care about the bottom line, right? You really wanted to make sure this was an efficient process and that you want to continue to grow the business because that's how you'll all profit and that's how you'll all benefit. And part of that is having a business model that's agile and able to make decisions. And so part of what I find a lot of folks don't understand about worker co-ops is that you can still have, and like you all have, a very traditional leadership structure. There is a CEO right now that is empowered to make operational decisions. But yet on top of that is there's this board of directors that gives kind of that ownership, that high level governance perspective and voice. And not everybody that is on staff is on the board of directors. It's a group of folks that are on the board of directors. Krystal, I'm wondering if you could tell me what it's like in a sense, almost putting that hat on of governance, because you are on the board of directors. Can you tell me what that experience has been like moving from being an employee to now representing the employees on this governance body to look at like high level strategic decisions and things like that? What's that process been like for you?
It's been new. That's the biggest word to kind of sum it up. Being in the inaugural board is really a space of learning and unlearning. I think it's as soon as we've stepped into a space, again, we've had the luxury of having our CEO come over and be a part of not only the board, but continuing in that space. But with Amy there, we know that our job is to really learn what's already there and how we can continue to build it efficiently and having the collective voice involved in those different decisions. And so it's been really a challenge of just being able to know what's going to take priority. I think our biggest thing is we are all invested into the future of the business. And so I think oftentimes we can get into a space of what's the future going to be like? And so it's really nice to be a part of those conversations, to be able to have a note of what the future is like in real time, rather than, in a normal business where you waiting for things to be reported out and only what management tells you. We have a great space of transparency. So zooming out of like my day-to-day operational tasks lens and kind of speaking from the voice of the collective made myself kind of grow into how can I be more valuable to the team in using my space on the board. And Project Equity gave us, being in Thrive, we get some additional resources and one-on-ones and learning modules that help with that, especially when we just had our first General Assembly. We do have 2 a year, so we did have our first one last month, which went wonderfully. And we were able to have that, able to modify our working plan with Thrive to be able to have that General Assembly module earlier than anticipated, so we can accommodate for that, which really kind of helped from the board perspective, having the knowledge to make those decisions and feeling, again, with the confidence to make those decisions of making the agenda, what we're going to talk about, what membership needs to learn, all of those things, with the guidance of Project Equity, help the board really go into that.
That's great. Yeah. So, Krystal, you're referring to our third program that we offer, which is Thrive, which is really the way I kind of think of it is it's day one work. Day one, meaning the day you convert and you become an employee-owned business. We believe that it's really important that you have somebody to walk alongside you, just as it was important to have somebody that's kind of can give you some options, give you examples of things they've seen. That's what we do in Thrive. So that's a 2-year program where we're working with you all to help you live into that new reality. So thanks for flagging that. It's always fun to hear that something's useful. Amy, I want to pivot over to you. What has it been like for you seeing this business you started 19 years ago because you saw a need in the industry for nonprofits to have support, and you said, this is a need I can fill and I want to fill it, and you created this amazing organization, Advisors for Change. What's it been like seeing it now being owned by employees?
It is so much better than I thought it was going to be. Like, it is amazing. It is, we had a board meeting yesterday and marked the fact that we were, just past our halfway of our first year, and we're doing it. Like, we're feeling the momentum. We have developed so much, and Crystal's being modest. She's played a huge role in driving the board forward. She like jumps in. It's like, hey, maybe we need a. She's like, I got it. Here it is. I got you. So we have a anonymous feedback form for all members, so that goes straight to the board chair. So if anybody has any issue organization wide, they already have a mechanism to make that comment. If they want to get something on the board agenda, they have a mechanism for that. So we really, there's so much we've already put in place to really walk our talk and open up the leadership. And it is so gratifying to I feel so free that I know this group has the ball. If something, I'm getting old, right? If something happens to me, which I hope doesn't happen, but if something happens to me, or whatever point in my life I make a choice to retire or change, what I'm doing as my kids are getting older, and my husband and I are thinking about the next phase of our life, it is so great to know that this amazing group of people, they have the ball. I totally trust them with it. And I'm happy to stick around and give advice and do the work that I love to do. It's allowed me to do more work directly with organizations again, because I'm freed up from some of that management responsibility. But it's really been an amazing process, and it's great to watch the emerging leaders really be able to lead and not just talk about leadership. And we talk a lot about leadership. People lead clients. Krystal leads these complex implementations in her day-to-day work. I don't get to see that every day, but I get to see Krystal as a leader on the board. Even folks who aren't serving on the board, they found opportunities through committees or through other work to find their voice and be leaders within the organization as well. So we're good about sharing that. So there's not just now a couple of us that are leaders. There's really leadership opportunities for everybody, in this model. And it's so incredibly gratifying.
That's awesome. One of the things I'm reflecting on here is in doing this work, I've come to recognize there are usually three key stakeholders that I've kind of got in my mind as I'm working on a project. And those stakeholders are the selling owner, the future owner, and the future business. And I feel that in our conversation, we've already kind of touched on you, Amy, as the selling owner, and kind of what that experience was like for you, the benefits you've experienced about legacy and all of these types of things. Krystal, you've been able to talk about the hopes, the excitement of stepping in as a future owner. Now you are an owner. So there's another stakeholder here we haven't talked about, and I think we've alluded to it. And I'd love for you both to reflect on this question, and maybe if anything comes to mind here. How has the business itself benefited from employee ownership, or where do you see the potential benefits as the business? And I know that you understand spreadsheets, you understand the bottom line, and so that's kind of what I'm getting to. What do you all think is going to be the impact of this for the business?
Yeah, I think that as an employee-owned cooperative now, we kind of show up in our space differently. When we come to work each day now, we have an additional hat to put on as our owner hat. And I feel like people are taking that very seriously and taking the opportunities to have their voices heard and lean into that shared governance structure, which is allowing us to have more confidence in the work that we're doing with our partners. And throughout the whole transition, we've always been told by, Amy, the best thing we can do is to maintain doing the good work that we're doing. And we would be able to see that benefit. But now it's really a general feeling of we're going to do that and more. And people are being more collaborative, more involved in making different committees and having opportunities to cooperate and network and learn each other even more, because we're really investing into our internal controls and into our leadership, and that strength in leadership will only make our business grow. And we are already seeing that with referrals coming in and the difference in our projected financials to where we are. So I think that it's truly building us. It's not just operating off of one person's vision anymore. You really feel that it's like a collective building for our company.
That's awesome. Amy, how about you? How have you seen, or do you see the potential for the business to improve or be impacted by employee ownership?
So many things to say. I'm going to try and pick the best ones. One is when we made our announcement, the organizations we work with were universally excited. Like it really speaks to the folks that we work with that they understand. Once they understand the model, they really appreciate that they're working with a collaborative group of people, and that where we're walking our talk, right? And so by being a co-op and saying, yeah, whoever you get on our team, they're a part owner in this business. And that really speaks to a lot of the organizations we work with, and has been also given us a competitive advantage in some of the RFPs we've done to get new work. So we still are exclusively working with nonprofits, though we've toyed with the idea of maybe also helping cooperatives. We need to learn a little bit more about it ourselves from an accounting perspective, but we definitely, in our space, the nonprofits we work with are often very attracted to this business model as opposed to the more traditional. So that's made a difference. And we just did our mid-year financials, and so this is for the first 6 months of our first year. We set our goal to be what we had set out in our 5-year planning as part of the financial modeling that we had done with Project Equity. And I'm happy to say that our forecast as of the middle of the year is completely on track and is expected to exceed that first year plan. And the thing that's most striking to me is our growth over the last 5 or 6 years has counted on adding 1 to 3 new employees per year. And because of the cooperative change, and we thought it might be, we didn't want to bring somebody in the middle of the process. We haven't added a new staff person since May of last year. And so now we're 6 months into this year, and our revenue is up. I don't know the percentage. I'm an accountant, I should know, but our revenue is dramatically up without adding more capacity by hiring more employees. It's up because people are invested and engaged, and we've been focused this year on efficiency. So yes, AI maybe has a little role in that, but mostly it's people working hard to find ways to be more efficient because they understand the impact on the bottom line and how that helps all of us. So, which isn't to say people weren't previously trying to be efficient. It's just, as Krystal said, the mood is a little bit different. When someone sees that opportunity, they know they can speak up and step into that opportunity, as opposed to being like, oh, well, Amy might not like this opportunity, so I'll just keep it to myself. So I love the dynamic where everybody feels empowered. We've worked hard to build a culture of empowerment, but this, again, we're now really walking the talk. It's not just, it doesn't feel like lip service. If it ever did, hopefully it didn't, but now it definitely isn't because everybody's invested in it. And I'll say one other thing, which is Krystal's right. Our number one messaging to people, as they were like, I don't know what it means to be an owner. We've said the number one thing you can do to help this business is do your work the best you possibly can do, because our business is built on referrals. So you do good work, they tell two people, and so on and so on. So it's really, really, we pride ourselves on being a high quality service delivery. We are responsive accountants. We're collaborative. We have a collaborative approach. We're kind of an anti-accountant accounting firm. And so we really, having people take pride in their work and know that they've got that 2 layers, that they're doing it as the owner and they're doing it as the employee and the colleague. 3 layers. It's really great. I mean, it's really made a difference in our bottom line, and I think it's going to continue to have a positive effect financially. And the conversations, we've been sharing financials with the organization and with everybody on the team for the last 5 years. But Krystal's right, and now it's much more comfortable to get into the granularity, and here's our average price per client, and here's how we're generating revenue, and here's where we're choosing to spend money and get feedback on that. It's a different level of interest when everybody knows it's their money on the table that we're talking about.
Oh, this is wonderful. It has been so amazing to be able to hear both of your experiences on this journey. I've worked with a lot of businesses. I continue to, but I don't always get the chance to have this kind of a conversation in retrospect where I'm kind of hearing what employee ownership is showing up like for you all. And what I guess I'd like just to wrap here and say, like, it is so clear to me that Amy, you had a vision, that you moved forward on that vision. You took some risks, you took some steps, you pulled folks alongside, and you lived into that vision of employee ownership. And then it invited folks like you, Krystal, to come alongside, to also step up, to become a member of the transition team, to be on the board of directors. And what I'm hearing from you all is that this goal of really finding a successful approach to transitioning a business that can benefit all three stakeholders, the selling owner, the future owners, and the future business, have really happened, and it's really materializing. And this has been just a gift for me to hear from both of you about this experience. And, we're going to keep talking. We're in Thrive together. I'm sure I'll be talking with you all as we continue to go down this road together. But thanks for your time today. This has been really wonderful.
No, thank you for the gift
Pleasure
of
working with you.
your support. I really, we wouldn't be anywhere without Project Equity, and we really benefited from, again, working with you directly. It's been a great journey, and we're the enthusiasm for our future as we now embark on a collaborative strategic planning process that we've never done before is really, really exciting. So we've got a lot to look forward to.
Oh, that's fun. All right. Well, hey, thank you both.
Thank you, Krystal.
Thank you so much, David.